My name is Benjamin Kepner, and welcome to another training video with Global Social Media Marketing. In today's agenda, we're going to talk about Google Analytics 4, and we'll commence with a discussion of the evolving landscape of cookie tracking, which has gained significance in 2023 as we go into 2024 due to recent privacy changes in the ongoing GA4 migration process. So let's go ahead and jump in. To assist you in navigating this terrain, I've prepared a user-friendly SOP and a handy spreadsheet, which you can easily screenshot for quick reference. This will serve as a valuable quick start guide, particularly for those who are new to the process. We'll delve into the intricacies of data streams, exploring their implications and how they tie into the setup of events, conversions, and audiences within GA4. I'll also provide a step-by-step demonstration by creating a setup tailored for an e-commerce client, recognizing the complexity that often comes with this vertical. Our agenda further includes a deep dive into the fascinating world of funnel explorations, an exciting new feature in GA4. We'll explore topics like identity spaces, modeling, and lifecycle reports to gain a comprehensive understanding of these vital aspects. The diagram displayed here offers a simplified visualization of recent developments in the realm of cookies. Notably, Chrome's decision to phase out third-party cookies has garnered attention, with updates from Google being frequently postponed. Additionally, we'll discuss the impact of changes to Apple devices, particularly in the context of Facebook ads. Many of us have observed a decline in tracking, but it's worth noting that efforts are being made to enhance tracking mechanisms, including those pertaining to Apple devices, alongside restrictions enforced by the AT&T framework.
Shortly thereafter, Android announced their new privacy sandbox, and now the ecosystem is saying, well, there's so much change, there's all these new data privacy laws that are coming, and so the industry is changing very rapidly. And I was actually having a conversation with somebody during one of the breakouts yesterday, and they said, well, how can you not know, what you should be doing or not? It really comes down to two things for me. One is just the lack of general knowledge of data privacy for, the average marketer. The second thing is that data privacy laws are changing constantly, right? They're not the same that they were this year as they were last year. So every time those laws change, marketers have to adapt and change the way that we track users. So here's kind of that migration process. This is me going through this process now with about 7 different clients. Eventually, you're going to have to go through this for all of your businesses. So here's kind of the process outline. There's kind of like 4 main buckets when I think about it. There's planning, there's implementation, there's integration, and there's migration. As far as planning is concerned, really the first start for that is thinking about what you currently have in your Universal Analytics account. If you don't have a Universal Analytics account, that's okay. If you're thinking about, should I even create one at this stage, to be honest, with the GA4 date coming so close, I would just recommend starting with GA4 from scratch and not worrying about UA at this stage. So you want to look at things like, how did the account get originally created? Who's got access to the UA account? Do you have a Google Tag Manager account? You'll see me kind of abbreviate these a lot. UAGA stands for Universal. GA4 is Google Analytics 4, and GTM is standing for Google Tag Manager. If you're not familiar with Google Tag Manager, I'll get into that in a little bit here. After you've kind of looked at the basic setup, maybe what events or tags you may have created in the past, you're going to use that planning process now to think about implementation. First thing you need to do is you need to set up a property. Property is what your given platform is, right? So if you're using a website, that's an example of a property. If your business has an app, that's an example of a property, right? So if you think of the hierarchy, it's account, property, and then it was view. Within that, you've also got data streams. Think of data streams as we've got all of these different channels, right? We've heard a lot of different speakers talk about SEO or organic search. We just had a presentation on Facebook. I'm sure we'll have somebody talk about TikTok. I've never been to a digital marketing conference that they're not talking about that at this stage. But those are all different channels with their own data, right? So that stream of data flows into GA4 so that we can track across our different channels. And then finally, implementing a new tracking code. So there is a different tracking code now from Universal. It's a different piece of like JavaScript code. It's not anything complex. You can just go into the admin settings of your GA4 account, grab that code, and you're going to place that on every page of your website or app. You can also integrate that code using Google Tag Manager. From there, you're going to use something called Google Signals. Google Signals is also new in GA4. Essentially what Google Signals are is that they identify users based on their behavioral patterns. So they're looking at users that sign into their Google accounts, and what are the behaviors that they're taking? Are they looking at specific websites? Are they making a purchase? Are they filling out a form on your website, right? These are all signals that sends to Google's algorithm so that it can create the most holistic data profile of your customer or potential lead. You're going to have a measurement ID. That's kind of what you're going to use if you're going to plug into Google Tag Manager. I'll get into a second again with Google Tag Manager on why that's important. Cross-domain measurement. This is a huge one in GA4. This is something that you couldn't really do that great in UA, to be honest, just because it wasn't built for that intention. But when I'm talking about cross-domain, classic examples of e-commerce store, right? Generally, unless you're using like an out-of-the-box solution like Shopify or Magento and you've got a customized e-commerce store, you're going to change to a different domain. So for example, SheratonDenver.com versus tickets.SheratonDenver.com, right? That's multiple domains. You're tracking the user as they move across those multiple domains. You also want to back up anything that you have. This is a big one. I was also talking about this in the breakouts with someone. There are a lot of different solutions for how to do this. You can manually pull your old data from UA. You can send it to Google BigQuery, which is a new solution for GA4 that's free now. And there's a bunch of other third-party tools. But you need to ask your organization, do you care about your UA data at all? And what is the process for migrating or storing that data? Then there's going to be tags and conversions that you're going to have to recreate. So if you're familiar with Universal Analytics, everything was based on goals, right? You would say, my goal is customer makes a purchase on this page, right? Goals are gone now. There are no such things as goals. Those are now referred to as events and conversions. Every event can become a conversion, but not every conversion is an event. So what I mean by that is an event is any action that a user takes on your given property. So if I'm on a website, I watch a video, that's an event. If I decide that for my business that video views on my homepage is a main KPI, I can mark that as a conversion. So that's kind of how that works, right? You can create all of these different events, but your conversions are really the things that your KPIs of your business care about. Generally, those are things like leads, sales, book calls, things like that. After that, you can add any views necessary. So what I mean by views is if you want to remove specific data, maybe you don't want to have like your employees adding to those data metrics of your website, right? You could create a view that excludes your employees looking at your website. And then also e-commerce tracking, which is its own specific kind of setup. Last things are integration, right? So integrating all of the different Google products, pretty much all of them are free at this stage that you can have direct integrations with. I highly recommend that you do that. And then if you're doing any paid media platforms, so again, if you can integrate anything from your Google Ads, if you can look at other paid media platforms like YouTube or Facebook, there are some integrations there. And then the last thing is the migration, right? And that's kind of where it gets sticky. What are you going to do with the old data? Where are you going to store that data? How are you going to use that data? So I've got some different kind of options there about, data cleaning and setting up new audiences based on that data and things like that. So data streams, just to follow up, very simple to create a GA4 data stream. You're just going to go to your GA4 property, create a data stream, and then enable data collection. You can do this for iOS, Android, or the World Wide Web. And you want to enable enhanced measurement if you can. The more data that you can give to Google Analytics, the better. Okay, so moving on to Tag Manager. Some of you may have used Tag Manager in the past, and some of you may have not. I would highly recommend that if you're not using Google Tag Manager, that you set up all of your events and conversions as much as you can in there. Essentially what this is, number one, is this is a solution built specifically for measuring everything that's going to happen in your reporting, and it makes it easier to organize that information. It's also a secure way to set up your events and tags, and there's also some direct integrations with things like, again, if you're a marketer and you're not knowing JavaScript code, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to have to build a customized code where Tag Manager already has some of those functionalities built in. A Google tag, if you're not familiar with that, is honestly just a single reusable tag that powers the measurement and informs other privacy-safe solutions. And then events and conversions is what I was kind of discussing, right? So goals are going away. I already kind of defined it very simply as an event is an action the user takes. But essentially what an event does is that it collects information and then sends that information back to your analytics solution. So again, value of the purchase, title of the page, whatever information you want to send back. Conversion events are going to be the things that contribute to the biggest success of your business. So think of KPIs. And then audiences, they did have audiences in Google Analytics, but really the big thing as we're moving to first-party data, right? Data that your business collects and owns, it's going to be creating audiences moving forward. So you going back to like the Facebook presentation, a lot of Facebook's innovation when they started advertising was around custom audiences and lookalike audiences. Well, now in GA4, I can do that same thing. I can't do lookalike audiences, but I can build audiences based off of purchasers. I can build audiences off of specific pages that are visited, right? And so this is really powerful because you can use these audiences as well for your other paid media platforms. So there's 4 main types of events. You've got automatically collected events, enhanced measurement events, recommended events, and custom events. Automatically collected events are events that are already built into your GA4 account. So that's really nice, right? You don't have to, if you're just starting from scratch, build everything from scratch. They already know, hey, these are the most common events that you should probably be tracking for. They're already in your account as soon as you set it up. So things like first visit, page view, scroll. Enhanced measurement events are thinking about, again, where specifically is the user going in the buyer journey process? Is there a specific location? Is there a specific refer? Other things you could look at are things like file downloads or video views. Recommended events are things that are going to be more focused on, let's say like a login or a purchase, right? Those are going to be based upon, again, how does your website function? So if, you're dealing with a senior home living example, since we've been using that example today, do they have to log into a portal to purchase that service? Right? That's an example of an event that we would want to track because we can now run specific campaigns based on that login. Custom events, those could be anything, right? Classic example, that's a membership, right? A membership to a gym. That is not a standard event for every business. That would be an example of a custom event. Another classic example for any nonprofits out there is a donation, right? When anybody makes a donation on your website, that's an example of a great custom event. So I have an example here of all the different tags and triggers. If you're an e-commerce business, I've gone through the process of creating that whole e-commerce flow. So I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty technical. This is more of just literally if you want to set this up for e-commerce and track how a user moves through the e-commerce buying checkout process, you can literally just take screenshots of these tags and triggers. These are all built in Google Tag Manager. So for example, I'm a user, I'm buying a ticket to the DigiMarcon conference at the Sheraton Denver. I'm going to the landing page and I'm viewing the page. That's going to be fired as an event name of a page view with the parameters of user reaches this location and this title of the page. Trigger is going to happen, which means that event is going to trigger as data now in my GA4 report when anybody reaches that virtual page view. Right? And so whenever that happens, based on that tag that I just set up, I'm going to see a 1. Or if I had 100 people that day, that's 100 people that went through that page view process. So that's the page view. That's the first step in our e-commerce flow. Second step might be view item, right? Many e-commerce stores have many products. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to see a big list of products. So that's kind of the second step, right? Landing page to viewing my products. Same setup here, very similar, view item list. What's the ID of the list or the name? And then how many items are we looking at? Very similar to the trigger, almost identical, right? Is that it's going to trigger every time somebody's viewing an item list. It's a custom event. That data is now being sent to GA4. So that's the second step in our e-commerce flow. Now I've looked at all the items that I've looked at. I looked at my summer bathing suit or my bikini, and I decided that, I'm going with the Speedo. Speedos are in. I am choosing that Speedo and I'm going to say, okay, I want to buy this Speedo, but what's the value of that Speedo? How much does it cost? What type of brand is it? How many Speedos do I need, right? Maybe I need different colors for the summary because I want to be fashionable. So this is kind of how I'm thinking about once I have that item, right? Getting values and sending that information back into GA4 so that I can start running more revenue-based information. This is also really powerful, some of those smart bidding options for any of my Google advertisers out there. You're gonna have a very similar trigger there, right? Custom event. Anytime there's a view item, it's gonna be sent back to GA4. Next one is add to cart. If I've found the speeder, I found that amazing conference at DigiMarcon, I'm going to now add that to my cart before I make that final purchase, right? So here's an example of what an add to cart tag looks like in Google Tag Manager. And then the trigger, again, very similar. After I've added the cart, I'm going to view my cart to make sure I have the correct items that I would like to purchase. So view cart, same, very similar parameters, and then also the trigger. Last thing is going to be the begin checkout event tags, where I'm going to go fill in my information, right? Like my name, my phone number, my shipping address, things like that. And then I'm going to have a very similar trigger yet again. The last thing would be the purchase event tag, right? So what I've done through all these slides is I've shown you the entire process of going through e-commerce, and we'll get to why this is important in a second. Last thing is just showing all of those final purchase information, right? These are all first-party data collection points that you can use for your business to create audiences and run better campaigns long-term. So things like transaction ID, affiliation, value, shipping, currency, coupon, et cetera, et cetera. And then again, a very similar trigger as we've seen in the past few other ones. So you've got all of these different variables that I actually walk through that whole flow process, right? This would be an example if you're an e-commerce person or you're selling any product. Just think of variables, if you're a mathematical person, right, as something that would be calculated with value. So in Tag Manager, when we're creating events and conversions, we need to assign a value, right? That value could be, example, the page title, or the value could be a coupon, right? So we need to give some type of value so we know it's worth to our business or how we're going to be able to track that from a user journey. So where I'm going with all this is in the new feature of funnel form explorations. So what this does is this allows you to create segments and audiences from specific data points for analysis in your website or your app. You might want to have a specific time constraint. For example, if you're a mother and you're having a baby and you're buying a baby product, right? Maybe it's very time constraint there because you're going to need that product for when the baby's delivered. Identify where users are dropping off. So, when I went from view item to add to cart, did I have an 80% drop off rate because the button was on the bottom left-hand corner, I couldn't see it, right? So that really shows me in my user journey, if you know anything about UAGA, you used to be able to do funnel visualizations, but you could only do 5. Now I can create as many funnel explorations as I want GA4, unlimited, and I can track all the different flows on my website. So if you're a service-based business, does the user go to a landing page that then fills out a form, that then goes to the thank you page, that goes to our blog? Like, how does that whole journey look? I can identify also, are there A/B testing options in the flow, right? Does this image work better? Should I have less pages and going into the flow? And then overall, just improving the efficiency in any abandoned cart journeys that might happen. So this is actually right here, to tie this all together, what a true funnel exploration would look like. And this is an example of a client that I'm working with in e-commerce. And you can kind of see all of those events with those bar charts on the right are exactly what I just went through, right? A page view to view item list, to view item, to add cart, to begin checkout, to purchase. And you can see that entire flow there. And you can see all these different drag and drop features that I can change to slice and dice my data in different ways that you couldn't do in UA. This is super valuable because if you're an e-commerce business and you don't know what your abandoned cart percentage is, you might be missing out on thousands of purchases, maybe millions if you're a big box retailer, right? Same thing with the service-based business. If you don't know where users are dropping off or what's converting, you could probably dramatically improve your conversion rates by just creating a funnel exploration like this. Next thing is identity spaces, right? So I talked a little bit that intro about like data privacy laws, and there was that blacked out chart of all these IDs that things are being created. But to keep it really simple for you, there's kind of these like 3 main types of identification. So an identity space, you want to just think of that as different ways to segment your users to identify them. So with all these data privacy law changes, right, The strategy as a marketer now is how can my business collect data that nobody else has access to, right? And doing it in an ethical way and using that data to run smarter campaigns and then push that to all of our media platforms, let the machine learning go and find those users, and you're going to have better results overall. So one way you can do that is through a user ID. Now, not every business has a user ID. You can think of, for an example of a user ID as like a login example. So, again, we're just using examples from the crowd today, like if it was a senior living home assistance, if they have a portal or a login or something like that, that could be an example of user ID. Another example of a user ID could be like an app, right? If you've got an email or there's an app ID for the user, that's another example of an ID.
What this does is it allows you to assign the user anonymously an ID. Are you trying to find someone like Benjamin Kepner at email benjamin.kepner@gmail.com? Well, in that case, we can just randomly assign that an user ID such as 123456789. In this way, we are protecting the privacy information of our customer, but we're still assigning them an ID so that we can track the journey as they move through a website or app. Another way of doing this is through a device ID. On your Apple phone, for example, you can use a INEI number as one way to track a user. You get that user ID and then you can track them. If you don't have either of these, Google Analytics 4 is going to automatically assign users. Google will randomly assign a number of numbers in a GA4 format. Google Signals is based on if they are signed into their Google accounts. So not everyone will always be signed into their accounts, what may actually cause them not to be trackable in some instances. Geography dimensions are defined by their IP address physically. These are just some of the ways that GA4 has improved in terms of data privacy. There are also other ways around workarounds for anonymizing the data. Solutions for things such as retargeting ads and knowing exactly what is going into the website from a traffic perspective can really help. Advanced features within Google Analytics 4 include predictive analytics. One client that I've been working with now has all of their e-commerce data in GA4 for us to be able to start getting insights. We can begin to use audience templates such as churning purchases and first-day purchasers or even last 7-day purchases for predictive modeling. Creating audiences off of any type of event or conversion on your website can be a gold mine for doing predictive modeling. This will then give you insights automatically within the home dashboard of GA4 as well. Expected lifetime value or conversion modeling is a new opportunity with the predictive analytics capabilities in GA4.
Right, so this is really the powerful side of GA4 that we didn't really have this option in UA. There wasn't any predictive analytics within the platform. You're going to have to work with a data scientist to do that. We don't have to have a data scientist anymore to do predictive modeling. It's built into the tool. So modeling with these three things: behavioral modeling, conversion modeling, and data-driven attribution. So behavioral modeling is when we're using machine learning and we're looking at how the user declines cookies or where they are. Conversion modeling is based on those like main KPIs of business that we know, right? Leads, sales, revenue. And then data-driven attribution is going to be the standard now for Google Analytics, meaning that they are using historical data to assign and model that user long-term. It's not a last click attribution, right? Where it's, this is the last thing the user did before they made a purchase, or it's not a first click attribution model where it's like they found us on Google, but then they went to Facebook and they went to YouTube, and it's not a time to, it's not any of these other attribution models. Data-driven attribution, that's going to be the standard for digital analytics, and that's pretty much the only option you've got, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to get the full benefits of GA4.
Total audience sample size is a concept that you may remember from Facebook that is also now available to be used within Google Analytics 4. How big is your audience and what is the criteria that it meets? ID tracking will help us to provide lifetime value. Does my customer purchase more than once a year? Do they refer a friend? The average business does not know their customer lifetime value. In the life cycle within GA4, we now have it broken down into acquisition, engagement, and monetization. Acquisition is how you're acquiring your user and where they're coming from. Do you have UTM parameters set up in place to attribute by channel or referral link? Engagement has engaged in sessions, pages, and screens, similar to what you may remember of
in the section of behavior within Universal Analytics. Bounce rate has now become a new named metric called engaged sessions. They either have to meet 1 to 2 of the following criteria. They either spent 10 seconds, viewed 2 or more pages on your website, or they converted. Monetization is e-commerce or transactional businesses. User report is demographics, technology. Keep in mind you won't have demographics like ages and gender in some instances if a user is not logged in again to their Google account.
I heavily researched GA4 the last year. I'm living and breathing it. I created a course on it. I was really happy to get to speak on this conference final on it. So slide 1 on sources, slide 2 on sources, slide 3 on sources. And that's all I got. My name's Benjamin Kepner. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And you can also visit my company website at Global Social Media Marketing if there's anything that can help you with Google Analytics 4.